Comcast announced that they are splitting off or spinning off NBC Universal, including the theme parks, including Peacock and the movie studios, into its own separate publicly traded company. And that was announced this morning.
Yes. So like Jared said, NBC Universal is what it'd be called. Universal Pictures, NBC, Telemundo, Peacock, Bravo, Sky, and the theme parks are all under this, right? So Comcast is what basically the cable company.
Yes. I mean, so Comcast has been a conglomerate. Their main
internet too.
Yeah, their main moneymaker historically has been broadband, cable, mobile service, all that stuff. That's the stuff they make the most money from.
Okay.
The theme parks, studios have kind of been more of a line item for them. And yeah, they announced this morning. And the details of them spinning this off are kind of interesting.
Yeah. So it is expected to be completed in a year. And Brian Roberts, the chairman and co-chief executive of Comcast, said in a statement that this tax-free spinoff would, quote, unlock a more entrepreneurial management approach for both companies. Roberts will continue to be involved in both companies, and Comcast shareholders will receive stock in each. Mike Cavanaugh, the co-chief executive of Comcast, will become chief executive of NBC Universal. Mike Angelakakis, I don't know. Michael A., the former chief financial officer of Comcast, will become Comcast's chief executive. So Kavanaugh will be the CEO of NBC Universal.
Yes. So a lot of people are looking at this and kind of confused as to why they're doing it. So first and foremost, there is speculation out there that, well, Comcast is doing this because maybe they're trying to find somebody to buy NBC Universal and those assets is why they're doing it. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that's why they're doing this, because if that was the goal, there are easier, cheaper, cleaner ways to do this that don't include the way in which that they're doing the spinoff. So not to get into like a lot of the business nitty gritty stuff, but if you were going to look to get a buyer, let's say you're going to package these things up and you were going to sell them off, you wouldn't go down this path of a 12-month process of this tax-free spinoff, all the regulations associated with that, to just have potentially somebody buy it. You would just privately sell it to somebody and do it that way. You also wouldn't put Mike Cavanaugh as the CEO of this thing. And I think that is a very interesting point about this, is Cavanaugh clearly is somebody that I think he's clearly been the one that they have been molding into the next CEO. Brian Roberts is, I don't know how old Brian Roberts is, but he's getting up there. Cavanaugh was made co-CEO last year of Comcast as a whole. Mm-hmm. So now he is the CEO of this new spinoff. I think what you're looking at here is Comcast's main business model, which is broadband, cable, all that stuff, is a melting ice cube. It's just depreciating. And really, when you look at their earnings reports, the investors mostly care about that end. So let's say that the parks or the studios have a really strong quarter. It doesn't really, they don't get a lot of credit for it because it's just a line item in Comcast business. So by spinning this off, this new company is really dependent upon the performance of the theme parks, of the streaming side, of the studio. So it's much more of a clearer picture of exactly that aspect of the business and how it's performing. I think it's part of this. I also think it's the future, because Comcast's business model is, again, it's just slowly dying. I mean, broadband, all that stuff, it's not going to, unless there's unforeseen circumstances that none of us know about, it's not going to have this massive rebound and become an asset that gains market value, essentially.
Well, when I first heard this, I was like, okay, well, I don't know why they're doing it. And I thought with some other people out there on the interwebs that they were maybe trying to sell NBC Universal. But then I'm thinking, wait a minute, theme parks are a huge moneymaker for Comcast or for Universal, whatever, this company. And I'm like, why would they try to sell it?
Well, especially given there's a lot of the reasons as to why they wouldn't be trying to sell this. So first off, I think if you're looking at anything as being purchased or having a merger, I think it's Comcast itself. You even saw this morning with investors. A lot of them think, and I actually think this makes a lot of sense, you separate out the theme parks, you separate out Peacock, these other properties, it makes it much easier for, say, Charter to come in and merge with Comcast because they're in the same boat as Comcast. And now you actually have a cleaner setup here to be able to do that. And I think that is maybe what this is pointing toward. Even Wall Street is speculating that this is something that is going to end up happening here. This has been rumored for a while. Like they've kind of, both of them have kind of kicked around the idea before. So Brian Roberts is not the CEO. He is now, I believe he's the chairman of the board. Mm-hmm. So Kavanaugh being the CEO of the new spinoff shows you right then and there where they're putting the value of stuff. Mm-hmm. I think they have a placeholder CEO here to essentially either have a merger or I don't know if Comcast would try and buy Charter. I think more or less Charter and Comcast would probably merge together and share assets, and it would cut down on costs and things like that. And they would continue to basically milk as much money as left in that demographic or that market, but knowing it is a melting ice cube sort of thing. So, I think there's a lot of reasons as to why you would not be selling the theme parks. First of all, they just had their first $1 billion quarter. So it's something. Why would you spend $8 billion to build Epic? Why would you do all this stuff to where you're just now starting to reap the real benefits of these investments you made over 10 years and you're just going to sell it now?
I mean, the debt, right? The Comcast debt?
Well, but that's the thing. So you spin this off and the Comcast debt is separate from the parks. Mm-hmm. So the parks do have debt because obviously you got to borrow money to build all these things. But it separates it out from Comcast. It allows it to do its own thing. And I think this is them also showing a lot of promise and really liking the direction of that end of the company. And you're basically saying, we have faith in this and we think this is going to continue to grow. Also, Comcast is 19.9% of a stakeholder in this new spinoff.
Oh, yeah. You told me that. Yeah.
Which that's another way, because a lot of people said, well, what if somebody tried to come in and buy it? Them having that big of a stake kind of is a way to like, they still have a say in what happens here and still like are getting, elicit somewhat of control there. Mm-hmm. But the other thing as well is with the way they're spinning this off, there is at least a 2 or 3 year period where you're supposed to operate independently. So again, if you were going to sell this off, you wouldn't do it in the way that they're currently doing this. Now, it's not to say that down the line something couldn't happen, but to the idea that they're spinning this off to just turn around and have somebody buy it, that is not what this setup does. And Universal has even come out and said this is not what they're doing. And again, you would not put Mike Kavanaugh in charge of this if you were just looking to have somebody come in and buy this.
Interesting. I mean, you're smarter than I am about all this stuff, so I'll take your word for it. I'm just I'm interested to see like what this does to the NBC Universal side. Like, are we going to see even more growth in the theme parks, and like how is this going to be affected?
Well, I was talking to some people. First off, by them doing this, it clearly is showing that they have a lot of faith in the theme parks and that end of the business, as well as probably the overall economy. Because you don't make a move like this if you don't think that you're going to continue to see growth. So I think this is them looking at this and saying, like, this is going to continue to grow. This is becoming a major asset, and we want it to be able to thrive. And there is the potential that getting capital is going to be actually easier with this new setup for capital growth to invest into the theme parks and things. Now, the timing is interesting because probably in the short term, you're not with this new setup. Once it's complete, you're not going to see, like, they're going to have to establish themselves because essentially they're a new company. They can issue shares and things like that. So you're probably not going to see a lot of capital investment in that 1 to 2 year span necessarily. But if you look at the timing of this, they just spent $8 billion on Epic. They have whatever's going on in Lost Continent, which is going to be probably Pokemon. You've got the new coaster coming in. You got the expansions on Epic. You got all this growth they're doing all over the place. That's still under the Comcast setup for getting that capital. So basically, yeah, they're not going to have as much. They're going to have $8 billion of a new theme park investment. So actually the timing makes some sense because now you're setting this company up to reap the rewards of the investments that you have made, especially in the last 5 years, but especially the last 10 as well, to reap the benefits of that going forward.
Yeah.
So I think that's partly what that is. Now, there is some concerns with Peacock because that could really drag this down. But in their last earnings call, they said that they were close to profitability with Peacock, which I was surprised to hear because Peacock is not a huge streamer. And if you look at the sub numbers, it's nowhere near like, Netflix, Disney Plus, and HBO Max and stuff.
Right.
But if Peacock is at the very least break even, maybe maybe it is profitable, that's not going to be a drag on this. So I think the biggest concern you do have is Peacock and the streaming services. I don't think the theme parks are much of a concern because I think those are on the uptrend.
Right.
So then you have the movie side. You have DreamWorks in there. You got Shrek 5 coming out. You got
right.
You got the Odyssey coming out for Universal Pictures. So I think this is them looking at this and saying we feel very bullish about this end of our business, and it's graduating up to become its own thing.
This is interesting. This is kind of is it timing have to do with anything? Like, why now?
Oh, like I said, I think the timing and the investments might be a play at this.
Just that, okay.
Yeah, but
All
if they really have hit a point where they do want to they do want to do something with Comcast. Maybe they're looking at this because I think this has been the thing we've always talked about is Comcast wants to become more of a theme park company and making all these investments into the theme parks, but that's going to take time to build up as the iceberg of these depreciating assets are there. They could be in talks with maybe Charter or somebody, and they're saying, "Hey, okay, because we don't want to sell the theme parks. We don't want anything. If we're going to merge this into our business, we don't want to get rid of these assets. We don't want somebody coming in here merging and having control of this. So we spin this off." And they just did the spin-off of the Versant stuff earlier this year, where they spun off a lot of those depreciating assets into its own company and a lot of the debt there. So in one way, they're cleaning up the books, but I think they're preparing for Comcast to be part of some sort of merger or somebody buying them that doesn't affect the theme parks.
It's so funny. It's like there's so many people out there that are saying like the opposite. You know what I mean? Like, I know we've been saying that too, but it's just so funny to see like, well, they're going to buy NBC. It's like, they might buy Comcast, guys. I don't think it's I don't think either one is like literally like completely out of the question, but it seems more likely they're going to buy Comcast.
I think this being spun off, I think the parks and stuff being spun off into its own company, there's no way they're looking to sell that. Because again, if that was your goal, there are much cleaner, easier ways to do this. This is going to take 12 months to do. It's going to be expensive. It's a tax-free situation. I don't know all the specifics of it, but to get that tax-free status, you have to meet certain obligations. And then if they were to sell, it would be a whole mess. So I personally don't think this has anything to do with them setting up the theme parks and this other stuff to be bought by somebody. Now, I actually think that this could end up meaning even more investments into the theme parks because it's going to make them leaner, more agile as a company. And so when you're talking the theme parks, previously you had a bunch of Comcast executives that are looking at, okay, we have the theme park investments. We also have, what's our line look like on the broadband, on the cable, and balancing all this stuff out. And you maybe have people that have an influence in the theme parks that really don't have anything to do or know the theme parks very well. That sheds you from that. So now in this new setup, you're leaner, you're making decisions for that specific thing of the theme parks, the studios, which you can even make an argument, especially with streaming too. Theme parks are tied to IP so much now.
Right.
So tying it to the studio, tying it to Peacock is kind of a natural thing you would do here.
Right.
So now you're making decisions specifically about the benefit of everything to do with that business and not having to concern yourself with, well, what about the broadband? What about these other aspects of the business? You're just free and clear of that, and you can make decisions based on just the metrics of what you're seeing, like, say, in the theme parks. So I think it could. And actually, there are, I talked to a couple people, there's actually a possibility this makes it actually easier for them to raise capital for these things. Because once they establish this, so once it's spun off, and this is why you might see less investments in the initial 1 to 2 year period because they're going to have to establish themselves as a company.
Right.
But once they start showing the revenue, and if the revenues continue to grow for the theme parks, it's going to become really clear, this is a growing segment. This is a growing company. Then getting capital to invest in these things actually becomes easier. And so I think it actually could mean more investments and more stuff coming into the theme parks and not less. It's just, it may not be right off the bat, but they just had this huge round of investments with Epic and all these other things they're adding right now. So they may have naturally not been planning on spending a bunch of money after these things are done for like 1 to 2 years anyways.
These are like really good points.
Well, but like I was just looking at when I first saw it, I was like, okay. And like as I'm reading it, I'm seeing, well, Kavanaugh. I mean, and Kavanaugh clearly is a guy that I have a hunch that Disney tried to talk to Kavanaugh about their CEO position. I have a hunch. There's literally no evidence of this. So at the time, that's when Disney was in their CEO search. And then out of the blue, Comcast comes in and makes Kavanaugh a co-CEO. I'm not saying, now I could be wrong, but to me at the time, I was like, that's interesting that they would do that. Because and we do know Disney reached out and talked to other people. Part of me wonders if they did reach out to, Kavanaugh about the position, and Comcast was like, no, you're not having Kavanaugh. So he is a guy that you could say is an up-and-comer, especially when it comes to like executives in these major companies. Mm-hmm. So to put him as the CEO of this new spinoff, I think that alone tells me that this is not the goal to just sell this off.
Yeah.
So personally, I'm rather bullish on this. I think if you're a fan of the Universal Parks and what they're doing, I actually think this is a natural progression of them continuing to mature as a theme park company and are looking to now have that reflect like how their performance is. Now, you wouldn't spin this off if you were thinking that things were going to be flat or down. Mm-hmm. You spin this off if you're thinking this is going to continue to grow. And before, it was just a line item for Comcast where investors were just more concerned about how Comcast core business was doing and not the theme parks and the other side of things. So now you're spinning this off to where that performance is 100% going to be dictated what investors think about that. So one thing that's also interesting what this could do for them is in many ways, Disney has kind of operated as like a joint venture in some of the projects that they have done. So by spinning off, that also allows them, like first off, they can issue stock. So they've got a little options there. They can also take on like project specific debt that they really can't do currently with Comcast as much, but it can also bring in like venture partners. So this could open them up for like, maybe it's a venture, maybe Nintendo, maybe whoever. Like it does give them more flexibility. And it's easier to do that as a standalone entity than being a division of Comcast. So essentially this, I think this gives them a lot more flexibility, but the main catalyst of it being that like they feel that the parks and that end of the business is stable enough now to be on its own and continue. Obviously, and continue to grow. And I think that's why you would put Kavanaugh on here. That's why you do this after Epic. Like the timing of it, I think, is kind of showing you, okay, we spent 10 years putting money, effort into the parks to really, again, they've eaten into market share from Disney. They're growing like crazy. Now's the time when you kind of do something like this, especially if you're going to do something. And I think maybe it may be part of that, but it could be the bigger picture is they're looking to do something with Comcast itself. Mm-hmm. So you just spin these out of here. You already spun off the other stuff into their own company. You clean up the books. The debt of Comcast is with Comcast. And you set it up to where you have more flexibility to do something with that end of the business. So I think potentially this means more investments, more expansions, and not less. And also, if they're going to look, I think realistically, if Universal is looking to get into the cruise industry, which I do think that they are, this makes it much more feasible to do that without Comcast. Because let's say you decide you want to get into a new thing, or maybe they acquire a cruise line or something. Comcast, being the conglomerate that it is, does have a lot more regulation worry with that, and you don't have that with this new spinoff. Maybe.
I didn't even think about cruises.
Well, I think that is coming at some point in the next easily 10 years. But so we'll see. I obviously, they could come out tomorrow and be like it's being sold, but I just don't think that's the case. I think this is them saying it's time for it to graduate to its own company. This is the future, and Comcast's base business model is essentially like a dinosaur, and it's probably going to merge with somebody else. They can, the leaner a company is, the easier they can react, they can change, and now they're not weighed down by Comcast as a whole, which does bring its benefits, of course, the funding and the capital aspect of it, but they may feel like the parks are well enough on their own as they are, that they're ready to operate on their own. sustain themselves in many ways.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
obviously they have down quarters and things, things change economically. It could be a move where you're like, maybe not so well, but if it goes probably how they're thinking it may go or wanting it to go, it could be a very, very strong move.
That is very true.
So time will tell, but that's just my take on it.